So unfortunately, we weren't able to record the class last time, so I'm just going to summarize some of the things that we had discussed. One of them was the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he spoke about three prophets. He said we have more right to doubt than Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And he said about Lut alayhi salam, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him, that he needed, or that he wanted strong support. And had I been brought a deal like Yusuf alayhi salam was brought, I would have taken the first deal to come out of the prison. So there are three things essentially that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was praising about these prophets. With Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he was praising his certainty. With Lut alayhi salatu wasalam, he was praising his strength. And with Yusuf alayhi salam, he was praising the fact that he was so principled and he was not willing to leave the status or leave that place until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely not just removed him from prison, but also freed his name and lifted any type of accusation against him, alayhi salatu wassalam. The next hadith that we had discussed was where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that every nation has been given miracles that were appropriate to their nation. So every prophet was given a miracle that was appropriate to his nation, and implying that the best miracle was given to him, alayhi salatu wasalam, which was what? The Quran. And because he had the best miracle, he would have the most followers. And this is something that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was granted, and something that he was given, alayhi salatu wasalam. The next hadith was about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that everyone is ordered to follow me, even the Jew and the Christian. And the reason that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned them was specifically to show the superiority of Islam, and that even previous nations and previous followers of the book, their religion is now abrogated and they're obligated to follow Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The last hadith was about the individuals who received two rewards, and basically what had happened. Can we close that door? I'm sorry. So the last hadith was about a man who married his slave girl. Like, he freed her and then he married her. So then some of his companions, they laughed at him, and they were like, and I don't want to say laughed, but they ridiculed him in saying that this is like purchasing an animal and then riding it. Like, you've just taken advantage. Basically, you've taken advantage of her. And one of the narrators responded saying that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there are a group of people, or there are types of people who receive two rewards. He said one is a kitabi, a Jew or a Christian that converts to Islam. He receives two rewards. He said the second person was a slave, a Muslim slave. They will, as long as they are a slave, they will receive double the reward. And he said the third is one who frees his slave girl and he marries her. He said that this person will receive two rewards, and this was to answer those individuals that had made that claim. Last time we began with the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِي لِيُشِكْنَا ليشكن أن ينزل فيكم ابن مريم حكما مقسطا فيكسر الصليب ويقتل الخنزير ويدع الجزية ويفيض المال حتى لا يقبله أحد." So over here in this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that by the one whose hands my life are in, he said that I fear that the son of Maryam alayhi salam will descend amongst you as a righteous or a just ruler, and he will destroy the cross and kill the pig, and he will leave off the jizya. He will not accept the jizya. He will not accept the tax. وَيُفِيضُ الْمَالَ حَتَّى لَا يَقْبَلُهُ أَحَدٌ. And he said that wealth will become so present and so prevalent that there will be no one to accept that wealth, meaning that there's no one who's going to be able to accept sadaqah, because wealth will be so it'll be so present throughout the land. So over here, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says a few things. He said, number one, he tells us that Isa alayhi salam will return. Right? This is the first thing. But he says, how will he return? Will he return as a prophet? No. He's going to return as a ruler, meaning that what is he going to rule with? He's going to rule with the Shariah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's not going to rule with his Sharia. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he described him and he says that he will descend, but he's not going to descend as a prophet. He's going to descend as a ruler. And because he's going to descend as a ruler, the rule that he's going to follow is the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says that there are two things that he's going to do. He's going to destroy the cross and he's going to kill pig. What is that? Or kill the pig? What does that mean? He's going to walk around destroying crosses and killing pigs. It's symbolic, right? It's meant to be symbolic to show what? Because both of these are major signs of what? The cross is a sign of not just Christianity, but of what in Christianity? What does the cross represent? Right? That he died on the cross, right? That he was crucified. And Islam came to negate that narrative. And in the pig, what is that representative of? Right? He would say that I never allowed this. So these two made, like, there was a change not just in the way that they believed in him, alayhi salam, but there was also a change in the way that they dealt with their rules and their regulations. So they changed the belief and they changed the laws. And this is what these two things are representative of. And it says that he will not accept the jizya. So normally, or during the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they came across people, they would give them three options. What were those options? So when there was a battle, right, and there was an expansion, or they were about to attack a village or a fortress or an encampment, what choices did they give them? Right. Either you could surrender with, and there are two ways they could surrender. What are those two ways? They can accept Islam, and if they accept Islam, what would happen? Right, their wealth would be protected. Their wealth and their wealth, their blood would be protected. And if they didn't accept Islam and they surrendered, what would happen in that scenario? They would pay jizya, right? They would pay this tax. And why would they do that? Because this would, when a non-Muslim is not obligated to pay zakat, right? And they're not obligated to participate in the draft, meaning that they don't have to go to war and they don't have to pay zakat. So they would have this tax. This tax is not a fixed amount. It's something that is discretionary, that is set by the state. So this is the options of surrender. And what is the other option? To fight. And if you fight, what chances are you taking at that point? Your death. For sure. That's the easy one, right? Right. You're taking the chance of dying, and if if the Muslims win, what happens to your wealth and your property? Right, it's distributed. Right, it's distributed. It's not given back to the ones that lose. It's the wealth is taken by the victors. So over here we had asked this question last time: how is it possible that Isa alayhi salam, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is Shari'? He's the one who abrogates. He's the one that makes the rules. He's the one that obligates things. He's the one that says things are not permissible. How is it possible that Isa alayhi salam can come and now remove a rule that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam set? You see the problem? Yes. Okay, so that's a possibility, right? That's a possibility. Either people at that point, there's no with the descent of Isa, they'd be like, okay, they're either going to accept or reject, right? There's no one there who's going to surrender. Possible. What is another possibility? Hmm? So over here, he's not changing any rules. He's not changing any laws, because who's the one that's telling us that this is going to happen? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So so he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we spent some time on things that were abrogated. So he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that when Isa comes, this law and this rule will no longer apply. Right. He said this law and this rule is no longer going to apply. So Isa alayhi salam, he's actually not changing anything. He's just imposing the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam that was informed of ahead of time. And this last part, وَيُفِيضُ الْمَالَ حَتَّى لَا يَقْبَلُهُ أَحَدٌ, that wealth will become so prevalent that there will be no one there to accept it. Hmm. So in the English, this is 155A. If you guys are trying to find it, I'm sorry. The first four hadith I ran through pretty quickly. 71, chapter 71. بيان النزول عيسى عليه السلام. Yep. So over here, it's very possible that wealth will become so prevalent that no one will be there to accept the zakat. No one will be there to accept sadaqah because of how the wealth is distributed and what is happening at this time. Because at this time, you either have people, like you said, who are accepting or rejecting. And we would imagine that the people rejecting are more or less. They're probably more, right? And because we imagine that there are more of them, that when they Isa alayhi salam, he's going to go on and he's going to be victorious in his battles against others. And what happens after the battles? The distribution of wealth, and there's just so much wealth, and it becomes so distributed that nobody actually ends up with a need after that. Which brings us to a couple interesting discussions on the role of the state, right? So when you have a Muslim state, what does the Muslim state supposed to do? When we imagine the Muslim state, so like now, for example, we live in the United States. What are some services that the United States government provides for us? Okay, protection for sure. Huh? Surveillance. That's under protection, right? You don't feel protected? No. Protection, maintaining law and order, right? So like you're talking about police, National Guard, defense, Army, Navy, etc. So all of that would fall under that. What else? Maintaining the roads, right? So Department of Transportation, that's something that's maintained by the government. What else? Schools, right? Department of Education handles all those things. So I'm sorry. Justice, right? Law and order, all of these things. So in general, these are the things that are handled by the government. Like in a Islamic government, what would it handle? Would it handle these same things? Is it necessary to handle these same things? So, for example, if school became privatized, and the government's like, "Hey, we're not doing anything with school. Let the people set up their own private institutions." Would they be held accountable? Like, is it sinful to not do that? No. Okay. So in this situation, because and the only reason I'm having this discussion is sometimes people, when they think of like an Islamic government or like an Islamic system, it ends up being very much socialist, right? In that, oh, the government handles all the wealth and it distributes all the wealth, and it handles all of these things. And I've always had an issue with that. I've always had a problem with that, because the moment you give, or give one person all of the wealth to distribute, what happens? Huh? Right? It's not gonna be good. It's definitely not gonna be good, because now you're opening the door to what? Well, yeah, greed, absolutely, like corruption. Because now, what is he going to do with that wealth? He's going to use that wealth to try and stay in power. So what do? You start paying off certain people, to maintain that position. Um, they so having an open market. So do you imagine a government coming in and regulating a market and saying that, okay, you have to sell this for this much and you have to sell this for that much? Can you imagine that? Yeah. How how practical do you think that is? How many thousands of items Just think about it. How many thousands of items do we have to purchase every day? And imagine coming up with a list for the pricing of each individual item, and how often do those prices fluctuate? Like almost daily. Imagine just trying to regulate gas, right? And that's just one item amongst all the different items. And how that fluctuates because, okay, everybody's purchasing it from outside and then they're processing it. The additives that you need to put in and how to process it, right? It just becomes like it's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. So these ideas of what the role of the government is, I think one thing that we can definitely agree on is the role is protection, right? It definitely needs to provide defense. It needs to provide law and order. There's no doubt about that. But beyond that, there's a zakat system. Is that the only welfare system in Islam? So, for example, one type of welfare goes to the government. Can other individuals within that society set up their own welfare or no? Can they help others as well? Yes, absolutely. So what is the purpose of the zakat system? Is that meant to be the first place I go to if I need help? Like even historically. What do you think? I'm sorry? Right. So historically the family was the first place that you went for help. The zakat is meant to be, so we create in our own lives, we create something called social networks, right? Like we have these nets that try to that catch us if something fails or if something falls. Just like insurance, right? Insurance is like, okay, well, man, if I can't pay this or I fall into debt for something, what is the insurance company supposed to do? It's supposed to catch me, right? It's that financial safety net. If I can't pay for something else, there's another safety net I have set in place. And then I have my family safety net set in place. And the last safety net that's supposed to exist is the zakat. Right? That's supposed to be the last one. It's not the first go-to. And one of the reasons I say that is what percentage of our wealth is taxed, like zakat? 2.5%, right? Is that a lot? Do you think 2.5% will cure poverty? Like cure poverty? Like realistically, right? Even if so here, number one is everyone eligible to give zakat? Is it possible that a person has a lot of assets, right? Has a lot of things. They have house, car, yacht, maybe 2 houses, but their zakatable money is little. Is that possible? It is. So this person technically didn't contribute anything to the zakat pool, even though he has money, right? And if you looked at him, you would imagine that he's very wealthy. Did he contribute in other ways? Because some people, they argue, it's like, oh no, well, you shouldn't buy those things, blah blah. If a person has all of these assets, right? If they have a boat, they have 2 homes, they have 3 cars, is that bad? No. Yes. Maybe. No. Okay. Well, someone might be like, okay, well, he's not helping the poor, right? He's helping his family live like a baller lifestyle. I agree, 100%. It's like let's go out on the yacht. Yeah, he's helping himself, sure. And you're right, right? He is helping himself, but I want you guys to kind of think about like a large economy. When you purchase a home, who's involved in purchasing that home? You have a realtor, right? You have to go through an agent, also a broker agent. You have to go through somebody who manages the titles and the deeds. If you're mortgaging your home, who do you have to deal with? You have to deal with the bank. You have to deal with underwriters, right? So in that purchase of a home, how many people benefited? There's a lot of people, right? You're talking about like 5 people took some of their salary. It came from that purchase. When he went to purchase a car, and with the home, I'm leaving out an element that will become clear when we talk about the car. So when I go to purchase a car, who benefited from that purchase? I'm sorry? The dealer. for sure. So in the dealer, who do you have? There's usually two or three people that benefit from that transaction, right? The manager gets a cut, the finance manager also gets a cut, and the the salesperson. So three people benefited from that sale. And if it's a new car, who else benefited? The people who are working in the factories, right? Who built that car, and the truck driver who drove that vehicle out to bring the car to that. Because if there's no movement of goods, would any of the people on this line have a job? I didn't mention the same thing in the house because some like houses, they're new buildings, like sometimes, right? But sometimes they're used homes that are purchased. Same thing with the yacht, right? So if I have a yacht, that means that can I just keep a boat anywhere? Right? I have to rent space in a marina, like on the dock, and there has to be somebody who's providing security for that dock and somebody who's managing it. Do you guys see? Right? And I mentioned that because it's important for us to understand, like, yes, this person might be selfish. He might be like the, you know what I mean? Like he might be all of those things, but he was forced now to contribute to how many people's salaries because of his purchases, right? A lot. And this is why. So, is it more important? Is it more important? Again, even keeping in mind this person's selfishness, is it more important now for an economy that he give his zakat or that he keep purchasing goods? Right? Do you guys see that? So what is the benefit in giving zakat? To purify my wealth. That is the benefit. And that's very important. It's not to cure poverty, right? It's not to take away, like, it's like some magical system that'll remove all the harms and all the ills in society. That's not the idea behind, because if you look at all of the other different types of worship, right? If you look at prayer, you look at Hajj, you look at fasting, they're all very personal, right? Zakat is one of the few that directly affects others, right? It directly affects them. But at the end of the day, even if a person holds $100,000, how much money is he giving in zakat? And this is holding $100,000. Huh? $2,500. All of you are out in the working world. How much can $2,500 realistically do? Huh? Not much, man. Like, so, like at my house, maybe like 2.5 months of groceries. Yeah, I guess I got 4 kids. uh, uh, but and not just that, everything's expensive now. It's very unfortunate. A bag of chips is $6, right? Like a Dorito bag, man. You know what I mean? Like Doritos. Like I was I went into the grocery store. I was like $6. Like what? Uh, I was like, and those were like the bootleg chips. They weren't even like the. It wasn't even like the name brand ones. But yeah, inflation is real. But so it's important again to keep in mind that when we talk about a Muslim economy, we have to have a very holistic view, and it's important to keep economies moving and to keep people contributing to those economies. Right, that's something that's really important. But at the same time, we have to be fiscally responsible. Right, we have to be responsible, and we have to be fiscally conservative. These things are really important, because if you go too much into consumerism, what happens? What is the end result? I'm sorry. You're broke, right? You end up being broke. You end up being in debt. So, do you guys know what percentage of Americans like have less than like $1,000 in their account? Yeah, yeah. It's like 70%. It's very high. Yeah, it's very high. So, I'm sorry. Yeah. So what? How most people live is by making their minimum payments on their credit cards. Yeah. Right. So you just make these minimum payments, and on interest you're paying like is ridiculous. You're paying like 30% a year. Allah make it easy. And the other problem is like, and this is something I've seen with maybe the generation after mine. Um, what am I, a millennial? Huh? Yeah, I'm a millennial. I think maybe the beginning of millennial. I'm not. Am I a boomer or no? I'm not a boomer. I can be. So what's interesting is like I guess millennials. For us, we always ran away from debt, right? Like debt was always considered something like really bad. For this generation, it's like empowering. It's so weird, right? It's actually empowering to have access to money that's not yours, which is scary, and because that's how we get caught up, right? It becomes very easy to get caught up in that way. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. So that's the opposite end, right? Like, should there be a consumer society? Like here, should we be allowed to consume? Yeah, absolutely, right? I think that's something that's really important. Um, it's made a huge shift in the quality of our life. I can't ever imagine just yelling out, Alexa, turn the heat up. You know what I mean? Like, it's so convenient. Or if I'm not home, being able to answer the door through my phone. Yeah, I mean, like the convenience is, it's amazing. Yes, may Allah accept. I hope you didn't forget us in your dua. You did. Oh, that's the. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, mm, yeah, sure. Mm. S- So, before the Saudis found petrol, like, and this is like maybe like the early 70s. Like before that, do you guys know what they did in like Mecca and Medina for like work? They used to wait for Hajj. They used to wait for Hajj. Like they would do trade during Hajj season, and that would carry them over for the following year. It, I remember some of them would be like house servants. Some of them would be drivers. Like the the economy shifted like drastically. The amount of wealth that they came into was is almost overnight. With the petroleum industry. Um, I don't know if you guys ever heard the story of Faisal and Jimmy Carter. No. So Jimmy Carter went to go see King Faisal when they had just first found oil. They had first discovered it, and they he said, Jimmy Carter said to him, he's like, listen, um, you found this oil. There's no way for you to use it unless we process it. So Faisal, he called one of the servants and he said, can you bring some milk and dates? So he brought them out and he put them in front of President at the time President Carter, and he said to him, he said, listen, we started from this and we can go back to this. He was poisoned like a few months later, but so like, huh? I'm sorry, right? Is I think it's like one of his nephews or something, man. Allah Mustaan. But like they came into money very quickly. During Faisal's kingship, they had um, they had one car in the country. Right, this wasn't even that long ago, and they had to build roads for that one car. And there were times where they had to actually call the local Bedouins to help get the car out of the sand because it would get stuck. Like I'm telling you, like it's almost overnight the wealth that came into. I was there for 10 years. I was there from like 2007 to 2017. The amount of changes I saw like I literally saw the Zemzem Tower going up. Like I literally saw it like when it was nothing to when it became like this towering monstrosity. But like you said, like it provides jobs, it provides services. How far did people have to go? Not necessarily. So now people are like, oh, well, there was food available then, blah blah blah. Was it the same quality? Was it the same cleanliness? You know what I mean? Like things have shifted dramatically, and and not in a bad way. It's sometimes we look at those spaces and we're like, oh man, I remember when this was here and when that was there. The only thing I'm doing at that moment, I'm just feeding into my nostalgia. Right? That's it. That's all I'm doing. And many times when we look back at our youth, it's like, man, our youth was so great and we did all this and blah blah blah. Ask our parents about our youth, right? If you really want like a full picture of how my youth was, ask my parents how things were then. And you know what they'll tell me is like, well, to get halal meat, we used to have to drive an hour and a half, right? And that's real. And some of us, we can't fathom driving more than 5 minutes and not finding halal meat or a halal restaurant. Um, Going to the masjid was like sometimes half hour to 40 minutes, depending on where you lived. Finding community, right? Their challenges were very different than the challenges we have today. So we look back with fondness, and one of the reasons we look back so fondly is because we didn't have any responsibilities. Right? Like, it was just like this wonderful carefree time um, that we now take for granted. But this is important. When we look at societies, like it's important to look at societies holistically, looking at the different contributions that individuals have to make and how those societies are supposed to be built up. Like we live in a modern age, and to think that government will solve everybody's problems. Well, there were a few governments that thought that, right? How well did it work out for them? All of the communist countries that fell, they fell for that reason because they believed that government could solve the problem. And how many of you have been to the DMV? Like, I'm sorry, what do you guys? You don't call it the DMV. What do you call it? What do you call it here? The department, huh? MVA? Yeah, Motor Vehicle Association. Yeah, yeah. I guess they don't call it DMV because of the area, right? So all of you have been to the MVA. How efficient do you find it? It's like extremely inefficient. The post office, extremely inefficient. These are all government agencies. Like the government cannot be efficient because there's no motivation to improve on the service. But if you do the same thing in the private sector, you find it improves significantly. So so allowing those spaces and allowing that type of transaction to happen in those markets, it actually brings a lot of innovation and news. Yes. Oh no, man. And why? Because hospitals are run by the government, right? Allah protect us. طيب, why did I go on that tangent? Oh, Isa alayhi salam. Yes, in the role of government. Yes, that's what it was. جزاك الله خير. So continuing on, قال وحدثنا عبد الأعلى بن حماد وأبو بكر بن أبي شيبة وزهير بن حرب قالوا حدثنا سفيان بن عيينة وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنيه حرملة ابن يحيى قال أخبرنا ابن وهب قال حدثني يونس وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا حسن الحلواني وعبد بن حميد عن يعقوب ابن إبراهيم بن سعد قال حدثنا أبي صالح كلهم عن الزهري بهذا الإسناد. So all of them, basically he brings four asanid here, and all of them bottleneck at Imam Zuhri. And he says, وَفِي رِوَايَةِ Ibn Uyayna, and he says Ibn Uyayna, he has a little bit different, a small difference in his narration. Imaman muqsitan wa hakaman adlan. So it's just his description of Isa alayhi salam, saying that he will be a leader and he will be a judge, right? So he will be a just leader and a just ruler. وفي رواية Yunus, and in Yunus's narration, the slight difference was hakaman adilan, that he will be a just ruler. ولم يذكر إمام مقسط, without mentioning the fact that he will be an imam or a religious leader. وفي حديث صالح حكما مقسطا, and Saleh he mentions that he will be a just ruler كما قال الليث. وفي حديثه من الزيادة وحتى تكون السجدة الواحدة خيرا من الدنيا وما فيها. He said until there will come a time where one sajda or one prostration will be better than the entire earth or the entire dunya and what is in it. ثم يقول أبو هريرة, and then Abu Huraira, when there's a hadith, he says, وَقْرَؤُوا إِن شِئْتُمْ, he says, and then recite, if you will, وَإِنَّ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابَ إِلَّا لِيُؤْمِنَنَّ بِهِ قَبْلَ مَوْتِهِ الْآيَةِ. So over here, at the end of this narration, there are a few things that he mentions. Number one, Imam Muslim, when he does this, you guys probably heard say, okay, well, he said it like this, and he added this, and this isn't the description that he used. Why does he do that? Why mention those differences? No reason? Uh-huh. Right. So by him showing the variations and the fact that they're very near in their wordings, what does that provide? Okay, maybe the fact that was well known. Not just that. If I bring all of these chains and I'm able to show the differences, and all of these differences are very near to each other, does that give me confidence in the authenticity of the hadith? Yes, absolutely. And this is the reason Imam Muslim does this. And this is something that he's very well known for. So we find again and again in his Sahih that sometimes he will bring chains and he will bring a hadith and he will bring wordings that are very similar to one another in order to bring confidence in the meaning of the hadith. So over here, he ends by saying that to the point where one prostration will be better than the dunya and everything that is in it. Why does he add that in the end? So, what is the situation here? Basically, he's talking about the descent of Isa alayhi salam. Yes? And at that time, what do we know is going on? So before Isa alayhi salam descends, what is happening? The Dajjal has come. Okay, the Dajjal has come, and what is happening on the earth? And he has managed to take over what? What does his kingdom look like? I'm sorry? They're going to be significantly less believers, for sure. And what is his kingdom? His kingdom is large, small, large. I'm sorry, it's large, it's luxurious, right? What are some of the places that he doesn't take over? Mecca and Medina. So Mecca and Medina, not a lot of land, right? And if the Prophet ﷺ said that he's unable to enter those two places, that means that most other places he'll be able to enter. So not only is his empire vast and strong, and the numbers are many, it is in this situation that Isa salam descends. And what happens after so there's actually a hadith that talks about where he'll descend. Today in that place there's a masjid. That place is known as Jami Masjid al-Umawi. It's in Damascus. It exists. It's there. This masjid did not exist during the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would not conquer Damascus until when? How many years down? How many years after his death sallallahu alaihi wasallam? I think another 7 years after his death. It was under Umar, yeah. So I think like about another 7 years after his sallallahu alaihi wasallam's death. So the fact that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions that he will descend and he's going to descend in this part of Damascus, and then 7 years later there's a masjid in that place. It's very telling of the truth of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and some of the signs. So Isa descends, and then what happens? Right, he's going to face the Dajjal, and what happens when he faces the Dajjal? The Dajjal will die. Like there are narrations that say that it's almost like he will melt. The Mahdi's already there. The Mahdi's there because in Makkah and Medina, who's ruling? The Mahdi. So then Isa will come, and because the Mahdi, he's there to unite the Muslims, but can he fight the Dajjal? No, because even the Prophet ﷺ said that if you come across the Dajjal, if you meet the Dajjal, what do? Run. And this is something that's important for us to also understand. Are there situations? Are there situations for us as Muslims as individuals where it is perfectly reasonable for us to run and to leave and to escape? Absolutely, right? My life is important. And not every situation is worth dying for. And we had spoken about this before, right? So if somebody tries to steal my wealth, I have every right to fight him and to defend myself. But I also have a choice to what? Well, fight, we already agreed, right? What is the other choice I have? Just give him the money, right? He's like, give me all your money. You're like, okay, yeah, here. And I will not be held Islamically accountable for not defending myself and for not standing up for myself. This is something that's completely reasonable. It's fine. Sometimes surrender, depending on the situation. It's fine. When is the only time I'm not allowed to show cowardice? Mhm. So basically, until my commander says to retreat, I cannot retreat. That is the only time. Cowardice is unacceptable. And not just that, it's there's a major spiritual consequence for running away from the battlefield at that point. But going back to this hadith, here he's talking about the value of Islam because there are only two people, right? So there's no jizya that will be accepted at this time. And this he's closing by saying that the sajda is better than the dunya and everything that's in it. Why? Because now there are only Muslims and not. So if I accept Islam, it is better than the dunya than anything and everything that is in it. And he recites the ayah. He recites the ayah saying, وَإِنَّ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا لِيُؤْمِنَنَّ بِهِ قَبْلَ مَوْتِهِ. He says that not one of the people of the book will fail to believe in him before his death. The death of who? Huh? Isa alayhi salam. Because now we know that at this time, Isa alayhi salam, how long will he continue ruling? 7 years. And at that time, then what'll happen? Then he'll die. عليه الصلاة والسلام. طيب قال حدثنا قتيبة بن سعيد قال حدثنا الليث عن سعيد بن أبي سعيد عن عطاء بن ميناء عن أبي هريرة أنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم والله لينزلن ابن مريم حكما عادلا فليكسرن الصليب. So over here that I swear by Allah that Isa will descend as a just ruler and he will destroy the cross. وَلَيَقْتُلَنَّ الْخِنْزِيرَ, and he will kill the pig. وَلَيَضَنَّ الْجِزْيَةَ, that he will leave the jizya. وَلَتُتْرَكَنَّ الْقَلَاسِ فَلَا يُسْعَى عَلَيْهَا وَلَتَذْهَبَنَّ الشَّحْنَاء وَالتَّبَاغُض وَالتَّحَاسُدْ لَيُدْعَوْنَ إِلَى الْمَالِ فَلَا يَقْبَلُ أَحَدٌ. So over here, there's more that says that spite, mutual hatred, and jealousy will disappear from between you. And then it will reach a point where there will be so much wealth that there will be no one to accept sadaqah. Right? There will be no one to accept any type of sadaqah or any type of charity. طيب قال حدثنا حرملة بن يحيى قال أخبرنا ابن وهب قال أخبرني يونس عن ابن شهاب قال أخبرني نافع مولى أبي قتادة الأنصاري أن أبو هريرة قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Abu Huraira, he said to the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said كيف أنتم إذا نزل ابن مريم فيكم وإمامكم منكم. He says that what will you do when Isa ibn Maryam descends among you and you have your leader, right? So you have your Imam with you, you have your leader with you. What will you do at that time? So what is he sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying? That what should happen? Should I keep my Imam? Should I keep my leader? Or do I change my bay'ah? Do I take bay'ah to Isa? Right. What if no, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Wa imamakum minkum." He's there. Your leader is there, and Isa comes. What will you do? Huh. He will pray behind the Mahdi. He will pray behind Imam Mahdi. So at that time, he will continue being a just a just what's the word I'm looking for? Like a judge. He'll continue being a judge under the leadership of the Mahdi, and he will continue until the Mahdi dies. At that point, he will become the next leader. قال وحدثني محمد بن حاتم قال حدثنا يعقوب بن إبراهيم قال حدثنا ابن أخي ابن شهاب عن عمه قال أخبرني نافع مولى ابن أبي قتادة الأنصاري أنه سمع أبي هريرة يقول. So over here أبو هريرة رضي الله عنه, he says قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كيف أنتم إذا نزل ابن مريم فيكم فأمكم. So how would you feel if the Isa would descend and lead you? قال وحدثني زهير بن حرب قال حدثني الوليد بن مسلم قال حدثنا ابن أبي ذئب عن ابن شهاب النافع مولى أبي قتادة عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال. So the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, كيف أنتم إذا نزل فيكم ابن مريم فأمكم منكم. So how would you feel if Ibn Maryam descended amongst you and he led you? فقلت لابن أبي ذئب, so I said to Ibn Abi Dhib, إن الأوزاعي حدثنا عن الزهري النافع عن أبي هريرة. He said that I said, one of the narrators, he goes to Ibn Abi Dhib, who was one of the narrators of the hadith. He says that I heard, and he mentions his chain, an Abu Hurairah, that he heard from of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, wa imamukum minkum, and that your imam is amongst you. And that your imam is amongst you. قال Ibn Abi Dhib, تدري ما أمكم منكم. He says, do you know if he will lead us? قالت تخبرني. He said, tell me. قال فأمكم بكتاب ربكم تبارك وتعالى وسنة نبيكم صلى الله عليه وسلم. He says that this means that how will he lead you? He will lead you with the book of Allah, and he will lead you with the sunnah of your messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And we'll stop here. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Any questions? No? Yeah.
Allahu Akbar.